Welcome to ILTV's Insider, the program where we take you through the toughest topics in Israel today. And I'm Aaron Porras, and today, history in the making, the unprecedented corruption trial of leading Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the first criminal trial against a sitting Israeli premier. And joining us to discuss is columnist Mark Shulman and Israeli attorney and legal advisor Simcha Rotman. But first, this.
אזרחי ישראל, מה שעומד היום למשפט זה הניסיון לסכל את רצון העם. הניסיון להפיל אותי ואת מחנה הימין.
With these words, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu began his trial in Jerusalem. The premier is facing 3 counts each of fraud and breach of trust and 1 count of bribery in 3 different criminal cases, carrying a total potential sentence of over 20 years in prison and/or a fine if found guilty. But as you heard, Netanyahu, for his part, is maintaining his innocence while repeating accusations that the entire trial is a politically motivated witch hunt. And in fact, he even started pointing to international legal experts to support his claims.
אחד מבכירי המשפטנים בעולם, פרופסור דרשוויץ מאוניברסיטת הרווארד, אמר את הדברים הבאים. הוא אומר, משפט נתניהו מעלה סכנה גדולה לדמוקרטיה ולשלטון החוק. זוהי הפעם הראשונה בהיסטוריה של כל מדינה מודרנית, שאדם עומד לדין על סיקור חיובי.
All right, so Simcha, I actually want to start with you now. What do you make of Professor Dershowitz's claims?
I think that what we see, and I think you can connect maybe some of the dots between what we saw in the U.S. and in Israel, trying to criminalize politics. It's something that started a few years ago, but in Israel, it's an ongoing process. When the judiciary and the legal profession, namely the Attorney General and the prosecution in Israel, try to take day-to-day action, legitimate day-to-day action of the political arena and to criminalize them, to say, if you do that, then you're a criminal. Now, it happened with appointment of trust. That it used to be the situation in Israel. You can appoint a lot of appointment as appointment of trust, and the court in the 90s that said, oh, it's a corruption. If you appoint as a person as an appointment of trust, that by itself is a corruption. And now what we see with Netanyahu case, and it's an ongoing process trying to limit the power of the public through its elected officials and taking the power to the unelected place, to the court.
So Mark, actually, I want to bounce off of that because another thing that Dershowitz kind of explained, he expanded on his statements, he's saying that if the government wanted to make certain actions illegal, like, say, going to Yediot Achronot or Walla and trying to get positive coverage, they should have made that illegal beforehand, not
excuse me. That's just a falsehood. He didn't understand the situation. And Dershowitz, the same way he sided with Trump, seems to be siding with Netanyahu. Listen, the reality is the people right here, 20 feet from us, can tell stories of Walla, how Netanyahu intervened specifically on various news stories. Now, that's fine if he was doing that just because, but he was doing that while giving tremendous regulatory positive things to Bezek that hurt all of us. It cost the people of Israel $1 billion shekels, or if not more. The moment he took away the Director General, who was about to change the regulatory environment for Bezek, and fired him, the first thing he did, that's what happened because Bezek didn't want him. The reality is, this is not criminalizing non-criminal behavior. It's catching a criminal in the act. Now, I'm not going to judge. I'm not the judges here. But the reality is, under Simcha's view, is you can never do anything wrong. Accepting gifts, which is illegal by Israeli law, that's okay because it was the prime minister who did it. Israel doesn't have any other method of doing this. The reality is that it was, Netanyahu stood there and basically claimed that the police commissioner which he appointed was corrupt. The Attorney General, which he appointed, was being blackmailed. And a cabal together had come together, everybody together, to undermine him and to remove the right-wing government from power. Now, there could have been many right-wing governments just now, just not headed by Netanyahu. He decided to stay, despite the fact that he had criminal indictment, probably one of the few leaders in the Western world who wouldn't resign, and maybe the only leader in the Western world, except maybe Italy, who wouldn't resign when he's indicted and say, I'll come back after I'm found not guilty. But he insisted on staying. So he stayed, and the reality is that there was a series of criminal indictments against him, and there are additional cases probably coming yet. The fact of the matter is that to stand there and attack your own judiciary, to to attack your own police force, to attack your own attorney general, all of whom you appointed. It's not like, in the sense of Trump, who suddenly inherited people. He has been the prime minister for 11 years, almost the whole system he appointed. So to stand there and accuse all of them of being blackmailed, of saying that they are all corrupt because they found reasons to indict him, that is a reason enough that he should have resigned in that moment. And everyone in that government should have resigned and be embarrassed to stand next to a man who accuses his own government of doing that.
Simcha?
In Israel, you don't appoint the entire systems. That's a big problem in the Israeli system of unelected officials, that they appoint themselves and you basically cannot get rid of them. That's beside
the police commissioner he appointed.
Just a second. That's besides the point. What happens in Israel in the last 25 years? All the prime ministers were investigated. Netanyahu himself was investigated in 20 different cases, and in 17 of them, they said it was bogus claims. And I believe that the gifts aside, it's a minor allegation. It's not
hundreds of thousands of shekels,
but it's a minor allegation because even the prosecution does not claim that he gave something in return. So he maybe violated the gifts law, but it's something
he did things in return. He didn't do bribery. It's a misdemeanor.
It's a misdemeanor. It's not a bribery, and the prosecution says it's not a bribery. But some people in the left in Israel accept what the prosecution says when they say it's bribery. When it's not bribery, they say, "Oh, they're weak. They're not prosecuting him enough." So it's a political.
He should plead guilty and go to 2 years in jail.
It's a political witch hunt. But the facts of the matter are, the political system. Justice Mazuz is a sitting justice in the Supreme Court in Israel. When he was appointed, not by Netanyahu, when he was appointed to be the chief legal advisor, the chief prosecutor of Israel, he said, I found in the prosecution, his words, I found in the prosecution a culture of fabricating cases. When the Justice Minister Ne'eman, the former Justice Minister before Shaked, said, wrote in his book, he's a professor at law, he said, I find it hard to believe that people in Israel still don't understand that the prosecution fabricated cases. A Justice Minister. Before him, Friedman, said the same. Justice Minister before him, Chaim Ramon, was by himself, by a corrupt prosecutor. We know today was a fabricated case. So we have a sick system. Let's deal with it. Right, and the fact that it helps Netanyahu does not make my will, and I think should not make anyone else will to change the system.
I want to actually take a look at what Netanyahu had to say, because as you guys already touched upon, he took time out of his speech to harshly go after some of the people going after him, including Roni Alshech and Roni Ritman, the lead investigators and police commissioner against him. We have a soundbite. Let's take a look.
שמעתי אתמול את המפכ"ל לשעבר רוני אלשיך. הוא הטיף בצדקנות על טוהר מידות. זהו אותו אלשיך שהעביר מיליונים מכספי משלם המיסים, ללא מכרז כמובן, ליועץ התקשורת שלו. זהו אותו אלשיך שעבר עבירה פלילית כשהדליף בשידור חי מתוך החקירות בענייני. אני עדיין מחכה להתנצלות. בזה הוא מזכיר רוני אחר, רוני ריטמן, שעמד בראש היחידה שחקרה אותי. הוא טען, בעזות מצח בלתי רגילה, את הטענה השקרית שאני הוא זה ששלחתי את קצינת המשטרה שהתלוננה נגדו בגין הטרדה מינית. אלה האנשים שהובילו את החקירות נגדי. אני בטוח שהם עשו את זה בלב פתוח ונפש חפצה.
Mark, is there any validity to these claims?
Look, I don't know the second one at all, to be honest with you. And the first one, again, I don't know about anything about this particular claim. All I know is he worked for the Shabak for almost his whole adult life. He's a religious guy who grew up
Roni Alshech,
who grew up in the settlements. He was appointed by Netanyahu. Everyone I've ever spoken to who's known him or worked with him said he's one of the straightest guys they've ever met. I only met him once briefly, so I can't comment beyond that. But the absurdity to stand there and attack the gentleman who you appointed, who gave his whole life for the state of Israel, being the deputy head of the Shabak, the Internal Security Services, and basically imply that he's corrupt. He didn't quite say it, but he implied that he was corrupt, is beyond any pale. You just don't do things like that. And he did this.
The fact that you just don't do, there are a lot of things that you just don't do. The prosecutor in the court, when Netanyahu was there, she lied to the court, a straight out lie that everyone knows about in 2 days before the trial, they started a trial in the media. By the way, it's against Israeli law. You cannot do it. It's a criminal offense to bring in testimonies, and it's making the trial basically invalid. It's called obstruction of justice. What happened in the major TV outlet in Israel, and she said to the court, not Netanyahu's lawyer complained about it. The other people. Other lawyers complained about that, and they said to the court. So she said, "Oh, really? Did they do it? So we will send them a letter to the prosecution and witnesses. We'll send them a letter saying they shouldn't interview to the media. Just listen." That's what she said. What can you do that the same lawyer complained before to the chief legal advisor and to her, and they said they would do nothing. And she said to the court, like she doesn't know anything about it. We have a corrupt justice system, face it. And the fact that you hear it from the prime minister, it's sad to hear.
I'm sorry.
But don't shoot the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger.
I'll shoot the messenger. I won't shoot the messenger, please. I don't want to be arrested by the Shabak. But the reality...
Don't shoot the sheriff, shoot the deputy.
Whatever.
Don't shoot the messenger.
The reality is, look, he's been prime minister for 11 years. If he was so concerned about the legal system, he had 11 years, he had 7, 8, 9 years to deal with it. He didn't deal with it. He only dealt with it once he was being indicted, once he was being looked at.
That I agree.
So the fact of the matter is, for him now to say these things is problematic. It's secondary problematic. Again, he is the prime minister. He keeps on saying how he's the prime minister, everyone elected him, all these other nice things, etc. As prime minister, he has certain responsibilities. He cannot go down to lower to the same level as everybody else as a prime minister. He can't stand there and be surrounded by all the Likud ministers and attack the justice system, which he effectively stands on top of. He's responsible for the justice system in the country. He cannot do that and should not be doing that and attacking the people who he appointed. He does not have that ability.
But
his lawyers can do it in court.
Is it correct?
But there are questionable actions. There are questionable actions within the prosecution, within the investigation. How might that affect the case?
If there are questionable actions, and I have no idea, I was not there, but if there are, and his lawyers know about it, then the proper place to do it is in the court, in the trial. This is a trial about to take place. Certain evidence.
But everything is televised right now.
No, it's not everything's not being televised. He wants it all televised, but so fine. I hope it's all televised, but that's fine. It should all be televised. But if there are questions, if there are things the prosecution didn't do right, then the right place to discuss it is in court. When you bring out a motion to dismiss this, to dismiss that, whatever it happens to be. You are the prime minister. Why should any thief who's caught, or we say he was caught doing something, now say, wait, I was framed. You can't come after me because I was framed.
You just don't accept the situation. You just can't accept the fact. I think a fact that it's true. What he says is right.
No, I think he's not right. I think there are problems in our legal system.
If he's right, let's assume that he's right.
No, even if he was right, it's the wrong place to be doing it. So he should be doing that with legal arguments. He should be doing that in the laws. He should not be doing that standing in front at the entrance of the case.
Why not? I sent him to do that.
What?
I sent him. I, as a public, sent him to do that.
You did not send him to do that.
I, as a public, voted.
You did not send him to stand there in front. Maybe you have, because you have a very particular interest. But he did not. He should not be standing there in the criminal courts in Israel in such a way.
Before the indictments, before the allegations, 900,000 people voted Likud. After the allegation, 1,300,000 people voted Likud. The people of Israel do not trust their justice system, do not trust these indictments. If you don't accept it, then you have a problem.
For the last 5 years, or 4 years to say the least, Netanyahu has been working to undermine people's trust in the legal system. He's been working
the justice system will work to undermine the trust of people in it.
I think the justice system is very problematic in itself. But that's different changes. But the reality is now is not the time.
When is the time? When is the time? When we have a prime minister and he's not under investigation? Excellent. I want his answer. Please say yes. Because if you will say yes, I will ask you, why did the justice system, and that's the reason, I believe, and again, I've mentioned before, the justice ministers who believe the same, a line of justice ministers who believe the same. The president of the state of Israel believes the same. For the past 25 years, they were putting up made-up allegations against the prime minister in order to prevent any change in the system.
We've had a corrupt government for the last 40 years.
For the last 40 years.
We've had corrupt governments.
So maybe we deserve it.
The Jewish agency is corrupt. Most of the public servants in this country
are
very
maybe we deserve it. Maybe we deserve it, and we don't need the justice system to save us from ourselves, because that's not democratic.
All right, well,
if we are corrupted people who choose corrupted people to stand to be the prime minister, let us choose our leaders, please.
All right, well, in the interest of transparency, because I think that's something that we touched upon a little bit here already, in the interest of transparency, Netanyahu is also calling again for the entire trial to be broadcast live. I want to take a look at that sync as well.
פה היום כראש הממשלה שלכם בגב זקוף ובראש מורם. ואני דורש, חשפו הכל, גלו הכל.
All right. Now, Simcha, what are the pros and cons of having this case broadcast live?
I think that, again, you can put, and I have to say maybe it will ruin the idea, but I agree with the criticism of Benjamin Netanyahu on what he did not do. He's not should put on trial for what he done. He should be put on trial because of what he didn't do. And he didn't take care of the justice system for many, many years, and that's a problem. But if the justice system and the current and the judges who are sitting in this case want to have any reason that people will trust what they do, they will have to televise the entire hearing. The pros and cons, I believe the pros are when you have first in history of the Western democracies, but first in the history, a trial against a sitting prime minister on a public media. You cannot allow yourself to do it behind closed doors or to do it through the flawed court reporters that we have in Israel.
What are the cons?
First of all, I agree with it 100%. Sure. I think that should be televised. I think, though, they can only be televised if something else happens, and unfortunately doesn't happen in most Israeli trials. It has to be continuous. In other words, it'll be.
Netanyahu did call for a continuous live stream.
No, I meant continuously. I mean, the trial should be, every week from Monday to Thursday or to Wednesday, whatever it is. In Israel, we have a case where many trials, we meet this Monday, and then a month from now there's another meeting, and then 3 weeks later there's another meeting, and it gets dragged over many years. Leaving aside the fact that it gets dragged over many years, the problem is people aren't able to keep. I question whether the judges can actually keep it straight. What happened?
They can't.
6 weeks. I mean, it's a terrible system in that sense. There is no excuse why all trials.
But we don't need to fix the system now because the prime minister is on trial.
Right. No. But if we're going to televise something, then we need to have something that's continuous, so that we don't have every 3 weeks we have 3 hours of Netanyahu trial. If we want to have a Netanyahu trial, we want to show it all.
Like Netflix, everything on together.
Let's stream it all from the beginning to the end in a period of a month or whatever it might be. Because that's the only way it'll make sense to anybody. Because otherwise it becomes a hodgepodge of what happened and what didn't happen. And let's remind everybody what happened 3 weeks ago and what didn't happen.
I mean, yeah, is it not a double-edged sword? Because again, everything is then reinterpreted by the media, much of which Netanyahu is accusing of being behind this witch hunt. So, I mean, might that...
The media will do it anyway.
Right,
the media will do it anyway. The question is, will they be able, like they did on this Channel 13, what they have done, will they be able to lie to us, to tell us things that are not there, to be like the magician who is hiding behind his back what he doesn't want us to see, or we will have the ability to show here what you said is not true. Here in the 10th minute in this trial, we saw that you are wrong. That's the ability to criticize what we hear from the court reporters, because the media in Israel and the media, especially the legal, the media coverage of the legal system is flawed. They get all their inputs from within the prosecution or from within the court, and they don't apply criticism.
Well, all right. Well, something you guys both touched on and agreed on actually, which is the problem with the length of this trial and the non-continuity with the coverage of the trial. Now, Netanyahu has already said that he would not accept a plea bargain, but in efforts to maybe reduce the amount of trial, reduce the impact that this might have on his political career, would you advise against that decision, or do you support that?
I will quote Professor Ruth Gabizon. She's a professor at law, and she was nominated to be in the justice as a justice in the Supreme Court, but Aaron Barak blocked her, and she is the winner of the Israel Prize for Law, and she said that Netanyahu has no chance of getting a just trial. A justice will not be in his case.
So she's not no point for a plea deal.
Definitely no point for a plea bargain, but I think the only way for Netanyahu to get anything out of this trial is to show that he can't get a justice done in the system.
What do you think this trial will have an effect? Like, how will this affect his career in the future? Because there are also reports that Netanyahu in the future wants to maybe become president.
Listen, I think his plan is to become president before the trial is over, and therefore once he becomes president, he no longer can be put on trial. He'll be held off for 8 years. So that, I think, is his probable strategy. And remember, the trials in Israel generally take a long time. And this one, I'm sure, will take even longer. I mean, I forgot how many witnesses. We're talking about an astounding number of witnesses and lawyers who are going to try to delay. So the reality is, I think that's his goal. His goal is to push it off and then to become president. If he becomes president, he no longer can be tried for 8 years. He'll be 80-something, and no one's going to want to put him on trial at the age of 80-something.
That's plausible. But that's plausible. And the fact that the criminal cases in Israel takes many, many years is part of the problems that needs to be taken care of in the justice system.
So what effect do you think that this will have on his political career in the future?
I think, as I said before he was indicted, before these allegations came through, he was supported by a few. Now he's supported by many, and I think the longer it will take, the justice system will lose support, and Netanyahu will gain support because there is a witch hunt against him. That's the idea the public gets, and I think the public gets a big chunk of the truth.
All right. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today. Thank you, Mark Schulman and Simcha Rothman, for joining us. And of course, tune in next time on Insider for more in-depth analysis on everything Israel. Also, if there's a topic that you want us to cover next, please let us know in the comment sections online. Finally, remember that for more news from Israel, follow ILTV on Facebook, like us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV channels. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.